Man, I got beat up today. Proper beat up. So today, a lot of weights beat me up more than heavy weights. What I decided to do today was go back to pin squats, and instead of having that kind of higher level of the safeties, I decided to put them right in the in the belly, right in the worst possible position for my squat. So I put it in the middle of my sticking point. That was an interesting experience. So, I was using 3 plates. Eventually, you'll see I ended up doing 5 sets of 10 in this weird position. And the feeling that I was getting was crazy, man. Like I was dripping with sweat. I was getting killed. And ever since then, I've been thinking about why it's so damn difficult to work with that crappy sticking point. Why it's so much more difficult to do that than to just use, compare that to super maximum loads at higher pins. So this is where you start to learn what some of these pillars actually mean. You start to define what's more difficult: range of motion, intensity, positioning, braking inertia. We start talking about why a squat is easier recovered for. While we recover from a squat, it seems like it's easier than a deadlift. And then you have a lot of people who say it's the other way around. But I think the majority of people have easier times with recovering from squats. That inertia, the idea of not having an eccentric portion aspect of the lifting, just go straight into the concentric. Breaking inertia seems to be so damn difficult. With the squat, you walk that thing out and there's no breaking of inertia. You kind of just start to lower it. By the time you get to the bottom portion of the squat, there's a bit of a rebound, there's a bit of a, stretch reflex, and you get back going. With the deadlift, it's glued to the ground. You got to break it. So the pin squats merge the squatting motion with that deadlift idea, with having the bar placed on the pins, and you're starting with a concentric. So damn taxing. I'm exhausted. There's probably another reason why I'm also exhausted. I finished my night shifts this morning. Slept for about six hours. No food, straight to the gym. Did my deadlift, worked up to 250. You guys will see that in a second. I was feeling actually quite stiff, quite tight, quite not ready for lifting. So you guys are seeing me here do quite a lot of stretching for the adductors, for the hamstrings. I felt incredible stiffness to that area. It was like I just couldn't. I felt like my hamstrings were going to pop off the bone if I didn't do this. It took me a little bit of time to loosen up. Eventually loosened up, and I got to 250. Quite happy with that after how I was feeling. But it was all basically, the whole training session was basically revolving around these pin squats. I really wanted to see how it is. So right now the bar of the pins is basically at my belly button point. I reckon one more point below that and I'm in hell. It is just so incredibly difficult for me to generate power from that position. It's almost like my body doesn't know what to do. It's literally in shock. So when I'm usually squatting ATG, I'm very strong out of the bottom, man. I feel like I can maybe that's an exercise to do. I just put the pins right in the ATG position and see how much power I can generate there. And maybe just do recordings of and just map out. Just basically map out each point of the pins, the height, and see where I generate most power. And so if I have, let's say, 10 points in the squat, and it's all pin squats, obviously right at the top is going to be like 5 tons. Like if you're moving the bar 1 centimeter, it's going to be super high load. I've said to you guys, I've used 340, in a really high pin squat. So let's just say super weight at the top, but every pin you start dropping below, it's like a sharp fall of strength. And eventually, I think there is a point where you're the weakest. And so taking the pins and working in that range of motion, making the body get tight and generate power from the pins, breaking that inertia in the worst possible moment, in the worst possible spot, I think could be beneficial. I don't know if Paul Anderson, the guy who came up with all of this, how he trained, whether he was focusing purely on the weakest portion of the lift, or whether he was just using super maximal loads for the sake of super maximal loads. So this is where it gets really interesting. You can have a movement, and you could emphasize different things. You know, do you emphasize the range of motion? Do you emphasize the load? Or do you emphasize different parts of that range of motion? This cooked me. This cooked me way, way harder than heavy loads. You know, sure, 340 kilos feels like crazy, but I wasn't dripping with sweat, man. This was absolutely killing me. Jelly legs. I had a pump in my lower back. In my lower back, I was feeling my rhomboids. I was feeling the upper erectors. I was feeling all of that stuff. It was just fighting to keep upright in that position. It was very, very difficult for me. So, you know, I came in with this idea. I was, you know, I'm coming off a night shift. I'm feeling a bit crappy. Let's work with less load and put it in the sticking motion, in the sticking point, and I almost died. Found it very, very difficult. In fact, what I planned to do was also do some dips and pull-ups after the pins, but I was in no shape after that. I was absolutely done. Probably it would have helped if I had a bit more sleep and if I had some food in my belly. I understand all of that, but that's something that I want to explore. You know, different pins. One of my friends, he says to me, you know, start with a really high pin and just work your way down. Work your way down. Just continuously progress. Maybe pick a weight that you're hitting, let's say 200 kilos, and try to hit 200 kilos at every level. And if you get stuck at a certain level, stay at that level, get 200 kilos, and keep progressing until you can get 200 kilos off every single pin height. I mean, that's one way of doing it. But eventually, I think, I wish you could, if you could fine tune those heights of those pins, but the holes seem to jump a whole lot. Today, man, like from that previous height, you know, the previous height was kind of like just below the sternum, maybe just below the ribs, kind of halfway between the end of the sternum and the belly button, like in the middle there. The next drop in the pins was right at the belly button, and my Lord, it's almost like the difficulty of the lift went up like 20%, 30%. Very, very difficult. So I ended up doing 5 sets of 10 with 140 with that. It was killing me. So I think if I was to go another pin down, I would be really interested if I'm stuck at 100 kilos. Could you imagine that? So I can score 200 kilos, 210 kilos. But if I start the lift at that really weak point, I can only get 100 kilos for a set of 10. Like, it's incredible. It's obvious where the weakness is. And this is where it gets really tricky to work out what's happening. You know, you can have that approach where you're using, you know, searching for different muscles. You're searching for different muscles to strengthen. And then you try to kind of think your way through which muscle is responsible for that range of motion. Hit that muscle. Or another approach would be look for different exercises, different ranges of motion, different styles of lifting. When you find something that is weak, hammer it. And that's what Louis Simmons was doing. That's what I believe he was doing. That's why there was 1,000 freaking exercises, left, right, and center. He kept throwing in these different variations of lifts, different bars, different tools, bands, chains, all these different things, in the hope that he would find something that he was weak at. And then he would smash the hell out of that, and then he will come back to the normal lift and will find it there was carryover. So that's another approach. I know in the bodybuilding world, you stand in front of a mirror, you flex this way, that way, you rotate, you flex this way, that way, and you see what part of your body is lacking. And then you're like, okay, I need more rhomboids, I need more upper back thickness, maybe I need to do some more rows, I need to do some more pull-ups, I need to bring up that thickness in my upper back. So there's that visual approach, like the hypertrophy approach to these things, where it's like, I have a really weak upper back visually, therefore I'm probably weak there, therefore I need to do more upper back. So it's kind of like a more bodybuilding approach to go muscle first. But I think when it comes to movement, if strength and movement is your focus, maybe start with just exploring different ranges of motion. And I think pin squats are a great way to do that. Find where you really, really suck and work there. Because if you were to map out, let's say, the horsepower in that, you know, torque band, in the RPM band, like if you were to go to a dyno and put your car on there and see the map of that dyno sheet, okay, so the weakness is at the start. Like let's say for the turbo cars, between 0 and 3, maybe 3,500 RPM, we have very little power because the turbines haven't started spinning. Not enough exhaust has been produced to spin those turbines, and therefore we don't have power. But then after 3.5 to 9, it is just like a huge increase of torque and horsepower. That's our strong point. So if you're looking at that car, we're like, how can we deal with that really weak performance at the start? Obviously, it's machinery and engineering. It's very hard to do that. But if we could somehow use that analogy in a human movement aspect and do a dyno run for our body and be like, okay, in that whole range of motion, I had most difficulties just above the ATG position, maybe at that parallel squat position. That's where I'm really, really weak at. Okay, let's hammer that. Because if we use our logic and we go, I have strengthened the weakest part of that range of motion, the whole system will get better. Because that weakness is holding you back. So I think that's a really interesting point to do. Maybe, I don't know how, but I would structure this in a training session. It would be interesting to somehow just work with every pin height and just try and map it out. Literally map it out like a dyno. So start at the top. I could probably lift, 350 kilos in the first pin. Basically, I'm moving the bar 1 centimeter. Go down a hole on the pins. Do that. Maybe I can move 320. Another pin. Oh, it's dropping to 270 now. Another pin. Oh, I've dropped to 220 now. And you find that the more you go down, the weaker you get. If it's a linear relationship from top to bottom, top is 300, at the bottom is 100, then you're like, this may be just a leverage thing. But if there is like a discrepancy there in the curve, say on the dyno sheet, you are, okay, so you're not building any power from between 1 and 3,000 RPM, but from 3 to 9, theoretically speaking, with this turbo specs, we should be having this like huge increase, linear increase almost, like exponential increase of power. But say in that between 3 and 9,000, there's a big kink in the bar. There's a big kink in the graph. There's just a drop off, and then it continues up again. So to looking at that, you can diagnose there's a problem there somewhere. Well, what's happening? What is happening? What is causing that, hiccup of performance? So then you start looking. That's what I'm thinking about with the pin squats. Is there a most optimal way to train the pin squats? Obviously, you are going after a different quality when you are doing super maximal loads. I spoke about core, spoke about CNS drive. That's all well and good. But what if you go for a different quality? Strengthening the weakness in that range of motion. And now I'm thinking beyond that. I'm thinking, could I do that with the deadlift? Could I do that with the bench? Could I do that with the overhead press? The other day I was doing overhead press. Off the shoulders, I'm okay. And then when the bar gets to kind of like that, chin, mouth level, it's like, it feels like the load is just going up 30%. It feels so much heavier in that transition of power. I don't know whether it's the shoulder weakness, whether it's a tricep weakness, whether it's a core weakness, positioning weakness. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I hit a brick wall and I have to go back down. So I hit 80 kilos easy on the overhead press. I felt really comfortable doing 80, but then 90 felt like immovable. Like it's almost like I get it off the shoulders okay, the bar gets around the mouth level and I die. So what is happening there? Let's study that. Could I use pins? How strong is that position for me if I had to break it off the pins at that level? Maybe that power off the pins is around 70 kilos or 60 kilos. I'm really weak in that position. That's something that I find fascinating as an approach. Obviously I've done rack pulls in the deadlift. Above the knees, I feel like it's freaking useless because it's essentially like a leg press. I don't know if there's any value in doing above the knee for strength purposes. I don't think there's any value in doing that. Below the knee, just below the knee, that's a crappy position. But for me with the deadlift, I feel like it's a linear relationship. At the bar is hell for me. It's really, really difficult when the bar is on the ground. When you're working off the ground, really difficult. I feel like it's easier in a deficit because I can get the bar moving with some quads with some knee extension. And then when I get to that ground level, I feel like I'm carrying some speed and I break through. So that's an interesting thing. Really interesting thing. So I'm going to go tonight and I'm going to try and find some articles, try and find some people that know about Paul Anderson, how he trained, whether he used, super maximal approach or whether he used a weakness point approach. I find that really fascinating. But, this level for me, man, I worked a lot harder here than I did one pin up higher. It was, I kept thinking to myself, oh, maybe it's the nights, man. Maybe it's the nights, man. Man, I was dying, like upper back, mid back was getting grilled. I was surprised to learn that I didn't really have discomfort in the lower back. It's just that mid back. I just couldn't keep upright. And obviously the quads were absolutely getting smashed, which is an observation that I made a bunch of time ago now. It seems like the people that do parallel squats or half squats, as I say, powerlifting standard squats, when I see people that are really good at that, they seem to have bigger quads than people that do ATG squats. Isn't that interesting? So it's more quad dominant to do half squats than it is to do full squats. So what is happening between the half squat and the ATG position? What's happening in that range? Adductors. And what are adductors? Well, adductors are one of these freak muscle groups which obviously adduct, and they also flex the hip and extend the hip. So I keep thinking to myself like, okay, so why do I have a lot of success going from a lot of volume in the squat to deadlift strength? Maybe it's that portion between the parallel squat and the ATG position. It's all adductors. So my squat essentially is an adductor exercise. And this is why my squats carry over so well to the deadlift, because my adductors keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and that carries over to the squat, to the deadlift. Man, sometimes I feel like you could go absolutely insane trying to pick all this stuff apart. Obviously, there is 1,000,001 different ways of approaching all of this stuff. Lots of different methods, lots of different ideas, lots of different training styles. But I enjoy picking all this stuff apart. I enjoy thinking about all this stuff. And I'm excited right now to go back in the house, sit down, look at some of these search terms, look at some of these ideas, read about Paul Anderson and try and pick apart what he actually did with this. I wish the man was still alive so I could go and ask him if that was possible at all. Because I don't think pin squats are a popular thing right now. I don't see too many people using them. Or at least maybe these pros are not really showing us what they're doing behind doors. Maybe they're not showing us what the working out is like. Maybe, I show you guys everything, but I'm not a supreme athlete as it is, so whatever. But it'll be interesting to see how many of these guys at the top flight are using pin squats, are using these kinds of things to their advantage. It's an interesting thing, because I know Louis Simmons and all those guys, they did pin presses. That was a big thing, doing pin presses, because where do most people fail in the bench press? Off the chest, no worries, and then you get to that 90-degree elbow angle and you just die. It's kind of like a similar angle when you go overhead press. Off the shoulders, no worries, and then you die when the bar's around the mouth. Squats. You get to an ATG position, no worries. You jump out, full power, and then you stop. So why don't we just work those angles? We work, I don't know what it is, 90-degree angles. What is it about 90 degrees for joints that kills us? 90-degree elbow, 90-degree knee, we have the least amount of strength. What is happening there? Is it an issue of handing over strength from one set of muscles to another, or whether the weighing of different muscles involvement changes around 90 degrees? I find that stuff so damn interesting, man. Is it just about 90 degrees? Man, I can't wait to go back in the house and sit down and look at this stuff. But before I do, I have to mention a few things. I want to thank all of you guys I want to thank all of you guys for responding so well to yesterday's video. I spoke about Laura, spoke about Stephen and their battles. You guys have gone across to her page, GoFundMe page, and you guys have reached out and supported her, donated money. You guys have sent messages to me, sharing your stories. I'm very, very proud of this community. I knew I was blessed with the following I had. I knew I was blessed with this community. But you guys have you've gone on a different level now, man. You guys are like me. We're like-minded. We're here because of training predominantly. But we have now united to make the world a better place by helping the people out who really need it. I'm not going to forget this, guys. This means a lot to me. It means a lot to Laura and Stephen and the family. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all of you guys for doing that. It's a special feeling for me. I will never forget this. We have some new names to mention on Patreon as well. Evgeny, Killen, Wendell. Once again, the recording bar that I'm using on this app is blocking Wendell completely. I'm pretty sure it says Wendell. Killian, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, man. I want to thank the other 4 full pages of Patreon names. Appreciate all of you guys. Appreciate you guys on Instagram and YouTube. Feeling blessed. Thank you for the support. And from everyone, at my emergency department, all of my colleagues, all of my friends, from everybody, Laura and Stephen, we're all very thankful for your support, guys. It really means a lot. I appreciate you guys. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.